Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And man, we're getting towards the end of our time here at Advent Health Training Center for training camp, because you have today, you have Thursday for joint practices, and then at least we're going to finally have a preseason game we can talk about before heading up to Pittsburgh for joint practices next week. So in terms of this show, we have today and we have Thursday, and then that's about it. But no shortage of things happening.
We're not limping to the end. We got lots to talk about.
We got a lot to talk about, and of course, per usual, starting with the quarterbacks. Always
that's where it
always
starts.
where everything starts. And so, of course, we know Baker Mayfield had missed a couple practices with what everybody on the team said, not a big deal, just kind of hit his hand on a shoulder pad. But as we were seeing as we were about to start the show, he's out there.
Yeah. Coach Bowles had said on Saturday that he would be back next week, and sure enough, there he is. He is fine. We've been watching him take snaps. I think that's probably the hardest part when your hand is sore, is taking the snaps, and they're spiking it right into his hands. He's not having a problem with it. So I think, like they said last week, not a big deal. So that's good in particular for this week, because you talked about us having joint practice on Thursday with Tennessee. You really want your starting quarterback there for that one, because the joint practices, a lot of coaches feel are at least as significant as the games that follow, because especially in the first week, if you go by last year, Baker and most of the starters didn't play at all in week one, so I would suspect he won't play on Saturday. And so Thursday is actually his chance to go against another team's first team. And you can do a lot more snaps because you don't have to worry about him getting hit. And also you can control situations. You can script situations that won't necessarily come up in a game. So they're very valuable, and it's good that Baker's going to be back for those.
And, of course, this is when also Kyle Trask gets a chance to have a lot of snaps, usually is this preseason. This is your time when you see what you've got as a backup and how comfortable you feel about that. And I know also there's a chance that maybe there's going to be another potential backup quarterback in the room.
Which one do you want me to talk about first?
Yeah, whichever you prefer.
Well, Kyle Trask, because Baker had those 2 days off, got a lot of action. Really, there was only two quarterbacks that could throw, him and Connor Bazelak. And so he got tons of action, and Coach Bowles said he did a really nice job with it. I think he's very entrenched as the number two, and I think you'll see him play a lot on Saturday night. He started the first game last year, and we're going to talk for a second. We may have two, we may have three quarterbacks available for that night. So you could see him playing like a whole half potentially. He could play a lot, and so that'll be good to see. Now, there's a new man that may be in the mix, that probably will be in the mix. We found out this morning. Actually, this has kind of been in the works for a while, so this is not really the beginning of a news story. It's sort of getting the culmination of something that's been in the works for a while. But Teddy Bridgewater is here. Teddy Bridgewater, the veteran quarterback, been with a number of teams. He's visiting now. Obviously, if the Bucs are interested in signing him, which I assume they are, he's going to have to take a physical. The Bucs have to figure out a corresponding roster move, because you have to create a spot for him on the 91-man camp roster. But it sure does seem like the Buccaneers are probably going to be signing Teddy Bridgewater, which is exciting.
It is. I've always really liked him and what he's about and everything he does in the community and just his whole attitude and approach. I don't know him personally, but from afar, I've always really enjoyed watching him.
Well, and he's got a lot of experience as a starter. He came in, he was the 32nd pick, the last pick of the first round in like 2016, I think, with Minnesota. Had a couple nice years, made the Pro Bowl in his second season, and just had that absolutely devastating leg injury in a practice before his third season, to the point where like guys were flipping out. It was bad. And so he never really overcame that in terms of staying with the Vikings, which kind of put him on a path where he ended up on a bunch of different teams.
Yeah, a bit of that journeyman role.
But he has started full seasons for Carolina, Minnesota, Denver, and I think the one season since he left Minnesota that really stands out for me, and it's because we got more of a up-close look at it, was 2019 with a very, very good Saints team that ended up going 13-3. Drew Brees got hurt. I don't remember what injury, but he was out for 5 games. Teddy Bridgewater started 5 games. The season for the Saints could have gone south. Of course, we kind of wished it would have, but it didn't. They went 5-0 in his starts, and they won that division, and largely because they were able to keep it going when he was out. So it's a guy can step right in. I also would like to point out, though, that I fully, from what I understand, this is not competition for Kyle Trask at number 2. He is our number 2. If the Buccaneers sign Teddy Bridgewater, and it looks like they will, it's a nice veteran presence. You could end up needing him at some point, but we're not bringing him in because there's any problem with Kyle or that we need a competition for the number 2 spot.
Yeah, and they've definitely seen that they've just needed some more numbers on the
yeah.
quarterback thing because of some of those injuries. That there were practices where you only had two guys,
Yeah.
and that's just tough during training camp to
It's a
be
lot of
taking
reps.
that many reps. And then also, of course, like you said, they love Kyle Trask. They love that he knows the system. He's been here. He works incredibly hard. But like you said, Teddy Bridgewater has more actual in-game experience in the regular season. So it's
Yeah.
nice to have both of those things
Yeah,
in your quarterback
sure.
room, which I think is a really great sign. All right, so now I know also we wanted to point out something from last practice. Bucky Irving, we're used to talking about him running and shedding guys. I don't know that.
Or catching a screen pass
Yes,
and running and shit.
but we had. I mean, he made a catch the other
Yeah.
day. Tell us what stood out to you about this play.
Well, it was a straight out diving forward catch. Apparently, as often happens with plays like this, the two sides were arguing whether it was a catch or not. But Todd Bowles said after practice that he believes it was a catch. I mean, you could see the highlight. It's an amazing play. It just underscores there's so many different ways that he can be involved in the offense. And when the Bucs talk about more vertical plays downfield, they're mainly talking about the receivers and Mike Evans and guys like that. But maybe he can be involved in that. The majority of his catches are mostly, like screen passes where it's all yak. But, maybe we can get him downfield a little bit on wheel routes or something like that. I will say that I'm always a little torn when a guy makes a great diving catch in practice because I don't think they can help it. I think it's instinctive and it takes over, but you just cringe a little bit like, oh, get up.
Yeah,
Like,
you just don't want to see guys on the ground, period.
The receiver for the Titans, Traylon Burks, made a great diving catch in practice last week or 2 weeks ago. Broke his shoulder, and he's done. He's out.
Yep. Yeah, but I mean, man, what a catch to see
I don't want
from
to put
Bucky.
that on anybody. No
I know,
jinx,
for sure. But
man,
man, and I love to think about if you do have Bucky's ability to run and shed tackles, to catch the screen pass, and then now to add something like this in there. I don't know how you try
Sky's the limit
to
for this
defend
guy,
him. I don't know what you try and do as a defense. All right, so now also, of course, a group that Bucky is going to be very interested in what they're looking like to block for him. We want to talk about the offensive line because, of course, the Tristan Wirfs storyline has been one throughout camp that we have been discussing of, Charlie Heck replacing him, what that could look like, how it affects everything about this offense. Well, what I love about training camp is it is your time to just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And it looks like Josh Grizzard has been doing that a little bit with his offensive line to just make sure that they feel good about whatever they decide to do for however long Tristan Wirfs is out.
Yeah, because obviously the plan at the moment is Charlie Heck. He's got experience playing left tackle and starting in the NFL. So you think he's your guy until Tristan is back, but you have to plan for just what if something happens to Charlie Heck. And we've talked about it before. All the rest of the tackles on this team have combined for 3 games and 0 starts in the NFL. So there's no experience behind them. And sometimes in a situation like that, instead of throwing in a guy to the fire, especially on a really good team with high aspirations, you mix guys around a little bit. And one thing we saw was a few snaps with Graham Barton playing left tackle, Ben Bredesen moving to center, and Elijah Klein, the draft pick they liked from last year, coming in at left guard. And Graham Barton did play left tackle for 3 seasons at Duke, so he's got experience there. Again, this is not, as Coach Bowles made clear, this is not the plan. This is not something we want to see. It's an emergency.
Yeah.
You prepare for the answer before the question arises.
Which I think is great. It's got to give people a lot of confidence that they really are trying to prepare for every solution, and that's what you want.
Yep.
Also, I know on the defensive side, during training camp, we tend to talk about every position group, every player. Like, we get to everything at some point. And we've talked a little bit about Logan Hall, but when we've talked about him, we've said the whole idea is that he just doesn't get talked about a whole lot, that he's this unsung hero a bit of the defense, and for especially a pretty high draft pick, he's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but coaches have been very emphatic about what he's done, especially this last year, and what he's been able to do. What have you learned about how they view him and what we've seen from this year and the role he could play on this defense?
I think the reason we don't talk about him a lot is he kind of has settled into a role that is just one that's not talked about.
Not
a
as
lot.
glamorous.
We talk about the edge rushers a lot, and we talk about big impact guys like Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey in the middle. Logan Hall is kind of doing what Will Golston did so well for so many years, and we know he was always an unsung hero, right? And he was good enough at it to last here for a very, very long time. I know he's going into high school coaching now, which is good to hear, talking about Will.
Yeah.
Logan Hall last year didn't get to play as many premium pass rushing snaps as some other guys because, you go into the nickel, you usually only have 2 down interior linemen, and lots of times that was Vita and Kalijah. And so even despite that, he had 5.5 sacks. Now, he says what's really helped him is he admits there was some timidness to his game early on as he was figuring things out. He felt like sometimes he was a little too much timid with what he was doing and thinking about things, and that now he's not thinking about it as much and he's just going. And to him, the goal, he said, is to make sure I get a quick get off on every single snap. And obviously that's important. And he had 5.5 sacks last year, which was a career high, despite not getting to be in a lot of those premium pass rush snaps.
He also got asked about one of his fellow defensive linemen, Vita Vea.
We always love to throw out the best quotes.
I love this, that they asked Logan Hall about what it's been like to watch the battle that is Vita Vea versus Graham Barton. And you and I always talk about how much we love these one-on-ones, love watching these battles. And man, Vita Vea versus Graham Barton, this is the clash of the Titans over here. And so what did Logan tell us about what it's been like to watch this?
So he made it clear, he's like, this is not about Graham. Graham's a great player, but Vita is just a different guy. And the money quote was, no knock on Graham, but it's like trying to stop Vita is like trying to stop the Titanic.
I love that.
Which, if we had an iceberg handy,
yep.
maybe
Tell
you could
Graham,
do so.
just be the iceberg.
But the Titanic, it's just a very evocative image.
Yeah, I liked that for sure.
What, in popular culture, what better images of there of size and power?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it ended tragically, but the whole idea was it's so huge and so powerful that nothing can take it down.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I like that. And I mean, it's true. I've watched their battles, and just watching Vita it's like art. It's just crazy what he can do of the bull rush versus some of the moves, his quickness, his size. Like, it's just crazy. And it's funny how often on my show I'll end up asking guys like, oh, did you have like a welcome to the NFL moment? And dang near every offensive lineman ends up saying Vita.
So he's like the Walmart greeter.
Yeah, like, oh
NFL.
boy, I am in the NFL, and now things are different. I know also on the defensive side of things, we've talked a lot about how much Todd Bowles wants takeaways. That is the emphasis, that is everything. But he did mention the other day, of course, it isn't everything, that you can still make some really good plays that don't result in takeaways, and we've seen guys doing that.
Well, what Todd has harped on a lot is that we had opportunities for interceptions in particular last year, and we just weren't catching the ball. And so, that's what he wants to see change. If you should catch it and you don't, then you're wasting an opportunity. But sometimes a PBU, a pass defense, isn't something you're probably going to be able to intercept. But if you could just get a finger in there and disrupt it, it's a great play. And so on Saturday, the Buccaneers finished up practice with a 2-point period where they ran 4 plays designed to convert a 2-point attempt. And on the first 3, all 3 of them had a defensive back getting a hand or even just a little bit of a hand on a pass in the end zone. First it was Jamel Dean, and then it was Jacob Parrish, and then it was Benjamin Emerson. That's not a turnover. It's not a takeaway, but breaking up what would be a touchdown pass in the end zone, who knows, it might be third down. That's potentially a huge play. So that was good to see. Rashad White did score on the 4th play to give 1 for the offense, but the defense won that drill because the DBs were very sticky.
Yeah, I like that. And someone else that we've seen making some plays is Devin Culp, and this is a guy that I think we talked about the tight end room. It's so interesting because it stayed exactly the same. But that doesn't mean that the production, the snaps, the plays this year might be exactly the same. That Devin Culp now, whole year under his belt, I think he's a really interesting one to see what he could do and just his athleticism, his abilities that he has, what that could end up adding. So what have you seen about where he might be, of where maybe Cade Otton doesn't have to be all things to all people at all times, if now you can throw a guy like Devin in there a little bit more.
He's a real X factor. Here he is on one-on-ones. Good play by the DB on that one. He's kind of an X factor because you really don't know, right? We saw him get a bit of a cameo at the end of last season, and he made some nice plays, and there's been a good buzz about him in this camp, and you think maybe this year Devin Culp becomes a significant part of the offense. And then on the other hand, you think, wow, we've got a lot of mouths to feed on offense. We've got a lot of great receivers we want to get on the field, and we talked about it before. Are we going to be running more 12 packages with 2 tight ends because we want to help Charlie Heck out? Or are we going to run more 11 because we just have this glut of amazing receivers? So it's a little hard to tell right now what his role is going to be. But what's helpful for Devin himself is, and you hate to see a guy out, but Cade Otton has been sitting out because he's got a bit of a mild hamstring thing, and that's meant a lot more snaps for Devin Culp. And he said when he went to the podium at the end of last week that he's getting to play in a lot of different spots. They're moving him around more to things and giving him assignments that he didn't normally have before, including blocking, which we keep hearing he's a very willing and feisty blocker, but it's something that he has to work on. He's not the biggest of the tight ends. He's the fastest, but he's not the biggest. So he's getting a lot of variety, and he thinks that's going to help him in the long run.
And then I know we've kind of gone position group by position group throughout camp, and one we want to dive into a little bit more now is the safeties. That this is going to be, of course, we know Antoine Winfield Jr., safety number one. We know who he is. We know what he's capable of. I'm really excited to see him hopefully be healthy throughout this season and get back to that kind of 2023 form where he definitely earned that, highest paid at the time defensive back. Now, tell me what stands out to you about the rest of this group and the way it factors in with, we have recently talked about the battle at the nickel position. These are sort of affecting each other of who's going to be at what position, who's going to be at the safety spot next to Antoine, what that could look like. So what stands out to you about this group and who could be that other person next to Antoine and how that affects the defense?
Well, here's our 7 safeties that we have on the roster right now. And as you said, it starts with Antoine Winfield Jr. And I was listening to a podcast yesterday where they were kind of going over the NFC North teams, and they were talking about Baltimore. And the people on the podcast said Kyle Hamilton, easily the best safety and the most versatile safety in the NFL.
Rude.
And I think that was true last year. And he's a fantastic player. But I think Antoine could come back for that
they could have left out the easily. Like, maybe he did, but
Well,
I think there's some. I think there will be some competition, especially this year.
It's totally fair regarding last year, and he has definitely. I think both those guys, you could make a bet on them that they'll be the best safety in the league, and they're both so versatile. So let's see Antoine return to that 2023 form where he was essentially the best safety in the NFL and won first-team AP All-Pro honors. And just, you remember, he filled up the stat line. He did everything: sacks, forced fumbles, interceptions, passes defense, everything. And that, obviously, if you could bring that back, we want more plays in the secondary. And then you have Tyke Smith, who has been running mostly first team next to him. And Tyke played mostly in the slot last year, but obviously he's played safety in his collegiate career. He's done both. And he's looked really good back there. He's a guy that we've heard compared flashes-wise to playing like Antoine Winfield. So imagine having 2 guys like that next to each other. And Tyke says the communication between those 2 has been very good. So it's kind of fun to think about what those 2 could do together at the back end of the defense.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. All right, well, we are going to end it for this week. And, man, we got coming back here Thursday with our joint practices. And also we're going to have some very special guests with us, so you're not going to want to miss that. So, again, hope you can actually join us out here at training camp to watch those joint practices Thursday. And if not, we'll be right here with you then for our final show out here from the Advent Health Training Center. We'll see you then.